So just like before we go into the proper filmmaking stuff, I just
Mhm.
want to talk about like the something stupid video with Nicole
Oh
Kidman.
God, that's a blast from the past. Yeah.
Yeah, well, exactly. So like when I was like 14, there was like this big thing like with try not to laugh challenges,
Hmm.
and that video was in it. And I remember
That's so
it was
funny.
in all of them for some reason. And then I remember my friends would do it, and there was like a forfeit where if you lost, you'd have to get slapped or something. And so your video would always make everyone crack up. So I just wanted to ask, like, is there any part of you that just wants to give up this filmmaking life and go back to making those type of videos?
I mean, if it gets people slapped, then I'm happy about it. Look, no, not really. Kind of the opposite. Like I even made a few kind of like internet sketches. I haven't released anything like that in years, and I've made a few since, like just a couple that I spent a lot of time on them, but just never released them. Got kind of a bit sheepish about it, but I don't know. I've always kind of liked. Uh, I've always kind of wanted to make the next thing be the better than the last thing,
Yeah.
and I do like that sort of stuff. But like the last thing I'd ever want to do is like make consistent internet kind of content or have to like start like making sketches like on such a regular basis that kind of becomes one's life. And yeah, I think that was just like something I used to do in the past, and that was like a lot of fun, but not really the thing I'm up to these days. But like that video is like, man, like I think that was the first thing I ever like did that kind of got some attention. I think it was kind of the first thing I ever really did proper. um I say proper. It was just like, a 30-second stupid like meme video.
Yeah.
But it was something that made me go like, oh shit, this is doing numbers. Like I
Yeah.
could I could do this again.
Well, it's got like 4 million views, so that's pretty big.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, it was fun. I can't believe it was in those laugh you lose challenges or whatever.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
like classic internet.
Because I just didn't even know, like, obviously I've been following your stuff for a while, but I did not know you made it until like literally 2 months ago. I was like, holy shit, that's crazy.
I used to get slapped because of this.
Yeah, I have a lot to thank you for. So,
You're very welcome.
sweet. So now just going to like your kind of timeline and process. So if I'm not mistaken, you kind of started off with the Doomsday Arcade after the Escapist series, which kind of like started your career and like boosted you forward. And it's like
Well, yeah, well, the Doomsday Arcade was the Escapist series.
yeah, yeah. So you were making it for them after you won the pilot. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I think that was the first thing I ever made was a little kind of, I guess you'd call it like a short film, but it was like a pilot for a web series that I made in my final year of year 12, final year of high school. And it I entered it, I made it for this competition and it won the competition. And the prize for the competition was that your entry became the first part of a 25-part series that you were then paid to make. So that was sort of how I jumped into figuring out like, oh, maybe like I'll give filmmaking a go. Like
Mhm.
it was something that I was doing in my free time leading up to that point for the last kind of probably like a year leading up to that point. I just kind of got into like visual effects tutorials online.
Mm.
Um, and it was basically like something that I always thought was like really sick, but like never had any idea that you could do it. And then, being kind of a computer based or somebody who's like very like au fait with computers, started to see the funny like plays and stuff, and kind of done some directing of school plays and thought, oh, I could like try some filmy stuff. And it was just really fortunate that it was like this kind of competition existed and it was on a website that I was going to at the time. So I made this thing and kind of got this job out of it. And had that not happened, like I never would have even thought about pursuing this as a job. It never felt like something that even entered the realm of possibility to like consider to try something like this.
Mm. Well, yeah, so it's got this like because I watched it the other day.
Oh God.
No, but it actually is like it's got some really funny like jokes that actually made me like I was laughing. I was like, oh, this is good because it's got this
Oh
kind of like
great.
referential parody humor that it seems to be like kind of woven throughout all the stuff you kind of do. Is that where it started, or have you always been into that type of humor?
I was always kind of into that stuff. Like growing up, I liked like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy
Yeah.
and like Spike Milligan books and Monty Python. Like I guess I always really liked genre pastiche, I think is probably the way to put it, like kind of genre parody. And even going back to that show, which was again like a show I started making when I was 17 and was 19 when I finished it, you know, calling it a show. It was like a crappy like web series, like in the kind of, wasn't pre-YouTube, but it was kind of before like YouTube was like a big thing. Like the show wasn't on YouTube, it was on like the host website's like proprietary video player. But really it became, the premise became just a way of like every week I could like kind of indulge in a different genre. Like the show was like had a rough narrative through line, but it was basically like a means to like make fun of genre tropes of film and video game genres as two characters kind of work their way through. You know, each episode was kind of a parody of a different video game, but with one kind of overarching plot that kind of gave us more of a framework to hang that stuff on.
Yeah. Oh, true. Yeah. So after this, you had this like period where you weren't at film school, correct? You didn't ever went
Correct. Yeah. Like I sort of think of like doing Doomsday Arcade was sort of my equivalent of a film school, because it was, you know,
Yeah.
almost 2 years of just straight writing, shooting, editing, like just kind of figuring it out.
Yeah. Did you have like, because I dropped out, I did a year and I was like, oh, it's just not for me. Did you have a period of people constantly telling you like, you need to be here and like a bit of self-doubt, like, oh, maybe I should go to film school? Or was it just like you knew this is the path you want to take?
Well, because I had it as a job, I sort of had to just do it. And doing it really just gave me the confidence of like, oh, I think I can just do this and just keep doing it. Like it was at a time in my life, I was young enough where it was sort of easy to just go and like shoot a sketch with no money and then spend like a month or two like doing all this posts and just trying to make it really fun and really polished, and then putting it out online, you know, which doesn't make you any money at all. And I had like a day job, or, you know, I was maybe still living with my parents for some of that stuff. And it was so I felt like film school would have just been somewhat of a step back maybe. But that
Mm.
said, like there are certain things that I never really learned because I didn't go to film school. Like I think it kind of sounds pretentious, but I think the best film school is just to watch films and like understand them. But then when I started moving on to like proper sets, I'd be like, I don't really know what a second AC does. I'm not quite across what a first AD really is, but that's fine. You get told on the day and you work it out. It's you know, it's okay.
Yeah.
I mean, but that is specifically when you're coming to things as like a writer director. If you know, I wouldn't know the first fucking thing about being like any member of the crew kind of beyond that, except for some kind of post stuff. So if that would obviously be where film school would have been super beneficial if you wanted to be in a role like that.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah. Because you always hear like a lot of directors do say that, like, you know, Edgar Wright, Tarantino, it's this, they make this very indie low budget thing and they always say that was my film school. And yeah, it's just two ways of looking at it, I guess. But after this, you kind of had that the George Lucas trailer, and then you
Mm-hmm.
released Time Trap from that, and that kind of boosted it. And you made that with a budget of $6,000. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think that's I think that's right. Yeah, which was just you know, self-funded. Yeah, but that's $6,000 with like people just lending their time and borrowing a camera and, you know, just like super just making it kind of happen.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, so I made this short film that had taken like a lot of effort. Like you know, one thing that I've always had up my sleeve, which has like been really helpful as like an indie guerrilla filmmaker, is kind of self-taught visual effects and like self-taught like composing and score production, that kind of stuff. So any one of my films, any one of my little sketches, like I could just throw free visual effects at it. And that was always like a way to differentiate the work, I think, from other people's work. But also like I've said this before, but I've always thought of like learning visual effects was a real like writing tool, because it meant that I could just write whatever I wanted. I didn't have to worry about budgets because I wouldn't have to hire a visual effects person to like pay to make that happen. So I've always been able to like just you kind of indulge in whatever I want because I can just kind of throw enough time at it on a computer to kind of make it look decent to get by. But yeah, I'd made this short film called Time Trap that was like a huge amount of work, like months of visual effects and composing and doing all of that stuff. And so I really didn't want to I didn't have a plan on how to release it, but I really wanted, it was really important for me to me that people see it, because this was like, the kind of a bigger project than I'd done at that point. And then randomly I'd made this like kind of stupid, I just had this idea for this like Star Wars parody video, which like as a series of words is the most cringe thing ever. But so I just kind of made that, and it sort of exploded. And within a day, I just was thinking like, shit, well, this short film that I'd already finished and I was going to, try and do the kind of film festival circuit with it. There was suddenly this moment where there were all these people kind of coming to my YouTube channel, and there was this traffic coming, and I thought, well, shit, I'll just release the short film like today, because there's not going to be a better chance to make that work. And it really worked out well. Like that day I like called one of the like a producer on the short film, and I called like the sound guy, and I was like, hey, just checking everybody's okay, that I'm just going to dump this out tomorrow. And yeah, it came out and got really kind of caught fire. It sort of got a lot of eyeballs on it, and it got a lot of eyeballs in LA on it. And that was actually how I got my US reps, was because the short film had kind of gone around the town in Los Angeles, and kind of I was out there a few weeks later kind of interviewing managers and agents. And so that ended up being like a really fortuitous little scheme.
So when that happened, like, I know everyone talks about it, but what was kind of your mindset when that was going on? Like all these reps talking to you, and you said before that like the Weinstein company was coming to you. Like, what was your thought process when all this was going on?
I mean, it was super exciting, and it was super surreal. Like I was I was working with like a small little kind of collective of people in Melbourne, but was really like not connected to the film world or anything proper. Like even locally, as I said, I never gone to film school. It was like, it always felt like just this little kind of independent thing. And so that felt exciting, and kind of learning how the industry works a little bit. Like in order to get jobs, you really do, I mean, it really seems like you need to be represented, because that's how sort of opportunities find you, and you find opportunities and you get connected to people. But I was also kind of weirdly hamstrung because I just signed on to do this web series, The Wizards of Oz, before I flew over to kind of find reps. So I got these reps, and they said, here's these things that we could kind of shoot for and go for. And I was like, yeah, that's great. But I have to go and spend like 45 weeks making this web show. So bye, see you then. Which was kind of fun. But no, it was like super exciting. Like it was really cool, like getting to, I just made the stupid like Star Wars video parody, and then like going and like chatting to people at Bad Robot whilst that Star Wars film was being edited, and then like the next room, and like that was very cool. So kind of neat stuff, but like other than getting repped, there wasn't a time to be pursuing other projects there.
Just talking about now, like the Wizards of Oz, because sorry, I'm like skipping through everything, but I know you've been asked these questions like 100 times, so I don't want to bore you too much.
I love it.
So I understand that, because this blew my mind, that you moved into your mum's house for 36 weeks and did the VFX straight for that time.
Yeah.
How do you do that? Like, what is your motivation like? Do you have these points where you're just going, I cannot be bothered, I'm done with this, or are you just set on this one thing and never stop?
I do get pretty fixated on things. Like I kind of go nuts for a project, like not film related at all, but like I've been renovating a house over the last couple of months, which is like a totally new thing. And I'm just so happy. As soon as I stop working on it, like I get like, we've kind of finished the things that we're doing in this house at the moment. And I'm like now getting like anxious and kind of bored. And like, I really want to be so busy that I can't do anything else. So that just works for me, particularly doing like visual effects and post on like Wizards, it's really satisfying work as like a day job, because your basic I've said it before, but like I find it akin to playing like a puzzle video game. You've got like these ingredients, you've got like this shot, you've got an actor, and you got this, and you know that you need it to look a certain way, and you have these certain tools. And so it's like, well, using those tools, how can I get from point A to point B? And then when you kind of finish the shot, like it looks so much better, and it's like really, you can see the work transforming before your eyes, so it feels really satisfying. And then it's like, cool, that shot's done. Next, onto the remaining 873 shots or whatever. And yeah, that never felt like too tedious. I'm also just, one of those people that's quite content to sit at a computer chair and listen to music or listen to podcasts and just kind of get through it. A boring guy. Boring.
I'm the exact same. That's literally all I do. I don't think I leave my room like at all. So, cool. And then just on the set of Wizards of Oz, like you're working with like obviously like Auntie Donna, Nick Cody, Guy Pearce, who are like clearly like very funny, talented improvisers. But I know a lot of directors don't love improvising. What are your thoughts when you're on set? Are you like just shoot the script, or do you just let these comedians just kind of go for it?
Well, it was a mixture of both. Like I was really really thrilled when improv was happening, because it's like, me and a guy named Nick Issel wrote the show. But then when you have somebody like the Auntie Donna guys and they're improvising, it's like, oh shit, they're writing funnier stuff than us. Like it feels, it's such a treat. But the way that I shoot is pretty the show was so there was so much kind of action. There were so many like weird specific beats that it wasn't as easy to improv on than it would be if it were just kind of coverage. You shoot your wide, you shoot your two close-ups, and you move on. Because usually every 30 seconds in a scene, like something would explode or a character would appear from a different scene. So there were like kind of technical reasons that meant it was a little trickier to improvise. But when we were just doing scenes where it was more, close up, wide, and improv could happen, like that was so good. It was really, really fun to kind of loosen it up a bit.
Cool.
I really love the idea of improv, but like there are some things where you can, there's certain like films where you can tell they've like been improving through the whole thing, and it's just kind of found in the edit, and that can still be funny. But I think it often means that the other filmmaking tools, kind of visually or orally, aren't necessarily being used because it's so loose. You can't kind of finely tune to something super tight.
Yeah, I think
you can find really funny stuff.
Yeah, a good example that came to mind when you said that was like Ghostbusters, not the most recent one with Paul Rudd, the one before that with Melissa McCarthy. Like it's just all improv, and some of it's funny, but like they're just these long sequences where they're just kind of going on, and it's like, where's this movie going? And it kind of hinders it a little bit.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Like I remember the scenes with like Chris Hemsworth in that movie, like they're funny. I remember laughing at them in the cinema, but they feel like very SNL improv-y sort of a thing.
Exactly. Yeah, the whole thing does feel like a sketch.
Yeah, and I'm not anti-improv, but I think I'm realizing that I really love improv in like podcasts and like longer form, like on stage, like long form improv is like really fucking cool, and on podcasts the same. But with film, I kind of want like it to be kind of tight and really sharp, really focused, and not just not just the dialogue, not just the performance, but like the camera moves and the sound, the lighting, and just keeping everything really like high end is something I find more thrilling than that.
Yeah, true. All right. Sweet. So now just on to Rebooted. So I've like showed my family and friends this film like 20 times because when it came out, I found it from Mr. Sunday Movies because I've followed.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I followed his channel for like 10 years since it started. And then I saw that and I was like, I wanted to do film. And then I was like, holy shit, this is crazy. And I just remember showing everyone, and it was like the biggest thing.
Oh, thank you, man.
Awesome. And then I understand the budget was only 120,000 roughly.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah. But if the budget was bigger, do you think it would have changed the film that much? Because it seems like when you watch it, it looks like it has this huge budget. and it doesn't feel like there was any cuts or anything at all. So do you think if you, let's say, got like 500,000, would that have improved the film at all, or what are your thoughts?
In terms of the final output, I genuinely, I've never thought about that. That's a great question. I think probably not. Which I think is probably like, I think it would have made some quality of life stuff easier. Probably, you know, some of the producers would have told you that, just in terms of it would have been nice if we had more money to get the stop motion animator a larger studio from which to work, that kind of a thing. But in terms of the finished, but you don't notice that when you're watching the film, that like, oh yeah, Samuel and Gerald were working in like a tiny little space because their work is so incredible, and their work probably wouldn't have changed in a bigger space, but I'm sure they would have had a nicer time of it. But yeah, probably not, because the truth is, when I feel like I do most of my directing on the page when I'm writing, and then when I'm storyboarding. And when I'm sitting down and like storyboarding the script, I'm not thinking like, oh, we're not going to be able to afford to do that. I just kind of do whatever I want. And I don't think we compromised on those things. Oh, the only thing that would maybe be different would be because that short film has a combination of genuine stop motion and live action in almost every shot, we weren't able to move the camera in specific three-dimensional ways. Like usually when I shoot, I like to do a lot of like dollies and tracks and that kind of a thing.
Yeah.
But because of the nature of combining those elements, we could shoot handheld, so you could have kind of 2D movement, you know, like a rotating camera and like some pans, but you couldn't really like step forward, because then we would have to step forward the stop motion camera in the exact same way. So we'd have to do like motion control stuff. And in the film, there's one motion control shot that we did. And if we had more budget, we might have been able to think like, okay, what could we do with that budget? Well, we could do some more motion control shots, because that stuff is expensive to do, and because it's so time consuming and it's so technical. But you know, like that's a pretty small element.
Yeah.
But otherwise, no, it kind of turned out exactly how I wanted it, and how it probably would have been with a higher budget. Because I think, you know, myself and the producers, like, we're good at just kind of making things work. Like there's a shot in the opening of the film that I am really proud of, that like we kind of it's like a drone shot. It like flies out of a cinema screen and over an audience, and then through a lobby, and then over the street of this old cinema, and then it kind of fades to that cinema being, you know, run down and boarded up decades later. And like, to me, that's the sort of shot that I get really excited by. But like, I think on paper that reads really expensive, and it should be really expensive, but we just like, you know, to fill a cinema with people to sit and be extras, like, costs so much money. Like you can't do that. So instead we hired out the cinema. Essentially, we paid for all the tickets to a screening of Fantastic Beasts 2. And said to the, you know, put posters around town being like, free screening of, you know, the Fantastic Beasts 2, like the tickets are already paid for, just come and sit in, and for 20 minutes we're just gonna, you know, fly a drone over the seats and light it, and then you'll be in a movie, haha. And you know, the people came, and they loved being it, because people being in there, because people like kind of enjoy being seeing the process as well. So, you know, like, I guess that's a small way whereby like, yeah, that should have cost a lot of money, but we did everything safely and legally, just with a bit of shrewdness, and managed to do it on the cheap.
I'm surprised you didn't just like put out something on your YouTube or something saying like, because you have this big following, like, were you not thinking maybe I could use, like, get people to come who follow me? Or
yeah, I mean, maybe, but I don't know. I think I've got a stupid relationship to like my YouTube channel and that following, because like I've never really made the most of it. I think I'm a bit sheepish about that stuff, whereby I kind of try and like work not in secret, but just like kind of like go do a little thing, and then in a couple of years be like, hey, here's the thing. You didn't know I was making it, but bye. That's
5 years now.
Yeah, exactly. It's probably a really stupid business decision and a really bad use of the lucky platform I've had in the past. Like, I've got this large-ish subscriber count on YouTube, but I don't think it counts for anything now. Like, it's been so long since I've posted anything. I don't understand how this stuff works, but I imagine that like the levels of engagement are just completely negligible because I haven't done anything or even engaged with any comments for years. Because yeah, I guess feeling a bit more of like somebody who's flown a bit solo, like I'm just not that interested in the social media side of things.
Yeah.
I just want to do the work, I guess.
Your channel, like, it reminds me of do you know like Pony Smasher, David F. Sandberg?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I love that channel.
Yeah, it's very similar to that, where like he'll be like, filming Shazam or like Lights Out, and you just don't see him for like a year, and then he'll come back and be like, the importance of sound in a movie. And then he just goes
Yeah,
again.
it's
You
so
don't
cool.
see
I
him.
love that stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, but I feel like his subscribers and the people who follow him like expect that. And I think it's the same with you, where obviously they want to see the next big thing you're gonna do. So there's no like expectation of a video a week or something like that.
Oh, well, thanks. Yeah,
Yeah.
hopefully. I mean, I always find that like when I do put things out after, which is always after a long period of time, people are like, "Oh yeah, this guy." Like, "Oh, I kind of remember this." Or
Yeah.
people being like, I don't remember subscribing to this channel because they subscribed to it 35 years ago because of a video game parody and never forgot to unsubscribe."
I've seen a lot of stuff where you talk about how you direct, and you say that it's all like you storyboard to a T, where everything is mapped out perfectly in your head, and you spend a lot of time on these storyboards that almost look like, graphic novels by the end. So through this, do you
Oh,
think
crap, graphic novels. But, yeah.
do you think that like this kind of uh supports your like love for visual storytelling? Like, are those things linked, or is that just something by itself?
No, well, definitely, because I think it would be really hard to like come up with that stuff on the day. And I really think of this stuff as like important. Like I don't know, like I've been following like a Twitter account recently that's just like, oh God, it sounds kind of cheesy to say, but it's called like out of context action movies. And like I haven't watched a lot of like, I don't like sit down and watch action movies that much these days, but like I just love watching the clips from like particularly like Hong Kong cinema, where it's like there's something kinetic about the camera movements that just like you just watch a scene and every now and then something just kind of makes me go like, oh, and I don't know what it is, and figuring that out, and you kind of go back and it's like, every gesture, like, a spear might be stabbed, and the way that the camera kind of like just cranks in with a wide angle, and the spear kind of just like the tip gets really close. Like I really like trying to figure out kind of the relationship between action and covering the action, that I find really interesting. And I like kind of applying that to, I think like the Star Wars prequels are an interesting example of a dissonance between kind of dialogue direction and action direction, whereby the dialogue is covered really basically. The dialogue is shot like a soap opera. It's nothing wrong with it. It's just really, really standard. And then the action scenes are like crazy. Cameras are flying all over the place. And it just feels like different movies when you watch it. And so I think that by really storyboarding everything is, firstly, I think you can maybe, I feel like I find more cohesion across the things that I'm trying to do, but also it really forces me to really sit and visualize what the final product is going to be on a shot by shot basis. And also you can kind of look at this, like really rudimentary kind of graphic novel style thing and kind of see where it starts to get visually a bit repetitive, or, storyboarding is also kind of helpful for me to kind of figure out what I want the blocking to be. And then also like, oh, if that character stands up here, then maybe the shot could kind of be overhead and following them around. I guess it's a way of me to just really feel like I've got the thing in my head. And then on the day when you're shooting, on the day when you're directing, there's so many things that come up. There's so many questions that you're always being asked. And you can kind of, I think, lose track of the day a little bit, because like it's just like exhausting. You're just kind of being pounded by things, and having kind of really clear storyboards for me are a really kind of secure skeleton to keep going back to kind of make sure that I'm not losing the day, and making sure that I've got kind of everything covered in the scenes that we're shooting. That was quite rambly, but something like that.
No, that's good. Because have you like you've just done that from the beginning, or is that something you picked up from like another director? Or
No, I just did that from the beginning, because I didn't know. I guess I didn't really realize that it was maybe not something that everybody did. Again, like not going to film school, it's just like that was the only way that I could figure out how to do it. Particularly with making stuff that is not just kind of dialogue, like stuff that kind of has action interrupting it. Yeah, I'd feel like totally lost without storyboards on set. Like genuinely, like I'm more comfortable with if I've lost a script on a day of like a little shoot, maybe there's no other script, I feel kind of more okay with that than I do not having the storyboards.
say like your process, like writing it, because I love hearing people talk about how they write in terms of what you do kind of every day while you're writing it. Do you just sit down, or are you like you write it, get it done in a week, or it takes, 8 months? Everyone's kind of different, and just your process with writing this clearly very successful script.
Yeah, my process with writing scripts is what the hardest thing is I'm not one of those people that like writes a million ideas. Like I know that there's a lot of people who are just write, like, oh, they're like, oh, I'll try writing this, I'll try writing this, I'll try writing that. Like I kind of wait until I hold myself. There's like I really just want to make sure that the idea is like super unique, like properly actually unique, haven't seen it before, until I go to write it, because otherwise I'm just not really that interested. And so a lot of my writing time is just kind of like waiting for an idea to come along, and then like every now and then an idea will come along and be like, oh fuck yeah, like that's exactly it. Like that's the idea that I'd be really jealous of if I'd heard that somebody else had taken it, and I would have thought like, fuck, why didn't I come up with that? Like sorts of ideas where you can distill them down to like 1 or 2 sentences, like just as a log line, and be like, oh shit, like yeah, I've seen that before, that's really cool. And then like I will kind of spend a lot of time daydreaming about that idea, but like breaking it down into like really like tried and true traditional, screenplay structure, which is just the stuff that we've all found, like Googling like 3-act structure, beat sheet, and working that out. And once I've got that, pretty solidly, which doesn't necessarily take that long, I'll then, I try and like go away. I try and like go find an Airbnb for like a week, and I'll kind of beat out a draft in like a week. Like I can beat out a draft really quickly, a first draft, but then I'm really bad at editing. Like I'm really slow at editing. I find editing like pulling teeth. So that's kind of how that process goes. It's really premise heavy for me. Like I know a lot of writers maybe start with like characters or a theme, and maybe I'm a shallow writer, but I just like, once I come up with like a hook, a gimmick, like a really sweet idea, then I'm like, okay, cool, that's it. Now I just got to figure out how I could spool that into kind of feature format. And with that hotel script, I can't talk too much about the script because the film hasn't been made, but like, that was a really tricky script to write, because it's very technical. It's very kind of hard to say, but like every single moment, every line of dialogue in the script kind of is repeated and viewed from different perspectives, dozens of times across the script, and built on. So like if I change a word, I have to like be like, okay, now zooming out to these 100 pages, like that I got to change that word here. It's a weird one.
Yeah.
And that was a sort of like hook that I was like really into. When I came up with it, I was like, okay, cool, this is sick. I don't know how this could be a feature film length. It's such a cool idea though. And that was the challenge with that film, was being like how to make it, 100 pages. Is this a short story? Like, is that all it is? Or could I kind of make it into something bigger? And hopefully I found a way to do that.
Yeah, sweet. Perfect. Cool. So now I just want to talk a little bit about just movies and filmmakers because it's like
Mhm.
very important for like what I'm trying to do and stuff. So I know that like the Lord of the Rings behind the scenes film, The Simpsons and Edgar Wright have like really kind of inspired your style and writing. But are there any other filmmakers who have really impacted how you create stuff?
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, all those things, as mentioned, again, you've done your homework very well. Hugely influential for me. The for the last few years, really, what I've been just like mainlining is horror. Like anything horror-y really just kind of gets me going. And it's not just because like I like being scared, which I do, but I also sometimes don't. Like I just watched that movie. This is really kind of pathetic, but did you see Incantation? It was a I don't want to get it wrong. I want to say like Taiwanese horror film that just came to Netflix.
Mm,
Um, Let me just look up its origin, so I'm not getting that wrong. Yeah, it's a Taiwanese horror film that was on Netflix, and I was just loving it, but it was like so scary. And my girlfriend can't watch scary movies, so she had gone to bed or she was doing something else, and I was like watching it, and she came out, and I was like at the end of the movie, and I was watching the movie like kind of through my fingers, but also I had pressed like menu on the TV's smart menu thing, so it wasn't full screen. It was like a third of the screen because I was so scared of the movie that I like didn't want to like be watching it. So I was like basically looking at the menu for the final 10 minutes of
yeah.
the film, watching like a picture in picture of it with the volume on like one.
Yeah.
Um, because yeah, like I'm a bit of a scaredy cat, but I love horror and find it so. The reason I think I love watching horror films is because they're after kind of thinking about movies for so long and analyzing them and watching so many of them, obviously they follow structures and they're predictable, and that's fine. But horror films genuinely surprise me. Like I think that they have a looseness to them that they can still be like, aiming to be like not having to be super art house to actually find really like entertaining films that can subvert structure. Characters aren't necessarily safe, like you kind of feel on edge, and also they can introduce like elements of surrealism, abstraction, or even just like magic without having to necessarily build like in a fantasy realm with the elves and the dwarves, like here's how magic can happen. Like a horror movie can be about real people in the real world, but then like one fucked up thing makes like
Yeah.
total surreal stuff happen, and that's exciting to me. And in terms of like wanting to make work that kind of has a really kind of original kind of 2 sentence sort of hook at the center, that's something that horror films can do. I think I feel like they can be really unique.
Yeah.
um
Do you have like a favorite current uh horror director or movie, or are you just kind of into everything?
um like these are kind of mainstream choices, but I mean, I think Ari Aster is like
Yeah.
unbelievable. I thought Hereditary was so good, and that was one of the most fun times I've ever had, like in a cinema, because I just didn't know where that movie was going. But like, it's the sweet spot for me because it's like unique, and I didn't know where it was going, but it's also like really exciting. Like it's also really thrilling to an audience. Like, and that's kind of my favorite sort of tone is unexpected, but also, you're in safe hands. It's not like, super
Yeah.
crazy. It's not like super
Yeah.
dull. A
Like a
really mainstream
trust in the
choice would be,
director.
sorry?
Like a trust in like the director. The audience trusts what the director's gonna do and they're like on board for the journey. That kind of feeling.
100%. Like there's a lot of kind of horror film that trends towards kind of the art house, and I'm not like, I'm coming up as like anti like kind of art house movies here, but I think I love movies that like show you stuff you've never seen before, but are also like, I'm not gonna like bore you. Like I'm
Yeah.
gonna not just make everything just be like super slow burn, and then in the last 5 minutes something crazy happens, which is like kind of boring structure of a lot of horror films. But
Yeah.
really mainstream choice, but like I think Jordan Peele is like really good. I thought that Nope was awesome.
Yeah.
And one thing I really like about him is his like ability to make like mimetic visuals in a way that I don't feel like a lot of directors have for a long time. Like this is kind of, I was thinking about this recently about how, at least maybe it's because you're growing up and you're like, well, when I was younger things were different, but I remember growing up, like there was like people did impressions of Austin Powers. Like Austin Powers was this huge mimetic character that people impersonated, right? And there was like Borat, and there was and going back earlier than that, there'd be like Adam Sandler movies that people would impersonate. And I was like, I felt like there was a really long time where like there just wasn't a character that people were impersonating. Like a really like unique voice that people yeah, like a unique voice or a unique character that people would impersonate. And I know that sounds stupid, but I think it's kind of a little synecdoche of how there's not these mimetic things that people kind of repeat anymore. Like when I think of these voices that people would impersonate, the last one I can think of is like Bane. That was the one that everybody did an impression of. But then I think it's similar with kind of visual stuff, whereby there's not like what Halloween costumes do people have from films these days? You could dress up as Beetlejuice, you could dress up as this, you dress up as Ghostbusters, whatever. But like, what's like iconic, mimetic horror visuals that could be Halloween costumes? And I think this is a long way of bringing it back to Jordan Peele. I think he does that so well.
Yeah.
Like, the sinking in Get Out is really, really memorable. And then Us has those red jumpsuited doppelgangers are so sick. And then in Nope, you've got the kind of jean jacket itself, but also Daniel Kaluuya wearing an orange Scorpion King hoodie whilst riding a horse. That's cool. The inflatable, wacky waving inflatable two men in the desert. The guy with the silver helmet. It's just all this like, I don't know. There's just like a really great taste of like kind of pulpy imagery that I know that's like a really small thing, but like I really love that about his work.
Yeah, because I was gonna say, like, when you were talking about like the impersonation thing, I couldn't think of anything either. The only thing I can think of is like kind of Rick and Morty, depending on who you're friends with. Like that's like one of the
for sure.
things. But yeah, it's definitely Borat's like, as soon as you said Austin Powers, I was like, oh, Borat. Like that's the biggest one.
Yeah.
You just don't see it that much these days. Like maybe that's just to do with how comedy is right now, where it's this weird kind of place. But I don't know.
Or that we've kind of lost the monoculture, whereby it used to be there were 4 movies available at any time and 10 TV channels, and now it's just like everything you can choose whatever. But but I do think there's something more to it than that. I mean, I think Everything Everywhere All at Once is something that's got like mimetic staying power, the googly eyes, like that kind of stuff.
Bagel.
Yeah, exactly. That was a cool movie. I mean, I love it, but yeah, in terms of like modern people that like blow my mind, like Ari Aster is a big one for sure.
Sweet. And now a little bit the other way, but what is the most annoying thing people do in the cinema?
Oh, that's funny. The most, I think that the most annoying experience I had individually was like, I mean, people talk about like eating very loud food is one thing, like, but that's kind of baked into the cinema experience because people are buying chalk tops that are like just wrapped in the loudest, crinkliest plastic like ever conceived. But there was one time I was in Sydney, I was by myself and I went to go see 1912. Did I get the year right? The year 1917. 1917. And I was like, cool, so it's like big immersive experience, like, really gonna try and get into this film. Like pretty empty cinema, but it's like really like small cinema in the middle of the day. I was there for a work trip. And these 2 guys come in behind me, and it's all fine. But like 30 minutes into the film, I hear this foil crinkling, and I realize they've unwrapped 2 big burritos, and they start eating these burritos, and it's just the smelliest food. It was just, it filled the entire cinema. There was an old woman like several rows in front who just, you could see her kind of sniffing the air and looking back to us as these guys were just eating these stanky ass burritos. So yeah, I think it's the smell of food that kind of bugs me. Like if somebody like eating an apple, like it's like smell this like apple, like that's gross as to me. I
Yeah.
mean, that and like obviously being on your phone is like
Yeah.
very annoying, but
And
I think we're just all I've just become numb to that now. It's all
I had the other month, I was seeing Doctor Strange 2, God knows why. And there was
I
this,
liked it. I was surprised. I actually liked that
I
movie.
think I
I
like
guess
the
because I
horror
expected to hate
elements,
it.
but like the Raimi elements, I love that. But the actual, like, I don't know, just some of the work on it was just a bit janky, like the VFX, which I'm not blaming them, but Marvel just cramps people. Anyway, there was this group of like six like 13-year-olds who came in, and they're like these little like Eshe kids who like were wearing all like the gear and stuff. And they came and they just sat in the front and they were just vaping, all of them. So all you could see was just like this smoke.
Wow,
Yeah.
that sucks.
And then this guy like told them off and was like, get out. Like, you guys need to stop or I'm going to tell the people. And then 10 minutes later, they start doing it again. So he goes and gets the manager, and the manager comes in and they've already ran away. So then the manager kicks out like the wrong group of people,
Oh
these
God.
other kids. Yeah. So it's just this whole mess. And that for me is the worst. Like vaping, I've seen so many people doing it now in cinemas. Like, what are you doing? This isn't your home. But
I've never seen that.
yeah.
That's wild. Oh man, I think I have actually seen that once. Yeah, I think I saw that at the Batman. Come to think of it, there was somebody
Uh,
vaping. So yeah, again,
yeah.
not a story. I'm just realizing I have technically seen that. Boom. But yeah, it's such
Um,
thick clouds as well. That sucks.
I
That's no good.
know. That's what bugged me. Is like you couldn't even see the screen basically because there were just like five of them just going at it, and I'm like in the front row as well. At least go to the back and do it.
Yeah, yeah.
Cool. So now I just got two quick questions about like your kind of future and the Australian film scene. Once again, feel free say as little as you want or as much as you want. But yeah.
Mhm.
So where do you want to see the Australian film scene move in the next like 5 to 10 years if you could like pick one big thing?
Um, well, I'd like to see us make firstly more stuff, and I'd love to see more. It's easy to say more good stuff coming out of the Australian scene, but I'd like us to. I have a friend who works in. I don't know exactly how to say what their job is, but they work at a studio and they get pitched for stuff, and they were talking about pitches they kind of that go around at Australia for people looking for financing for their films. And one thing that's kind of really lacking across the board is a sense of what's commercial, and not to try and make it. I'm not trying to like make a case for the cynical like Australia should be making Marvel movies, but making movies that people want to see. And I think that the movies that we make that people want to see is usually just small town has a secret kind of movies, and those are fine, but I think it becomes this kind of self-fulfilling prophecy where we think people don't want to see Australian films, and so we just kind of make quite samey films that have like a bit of a reach to like middle-aged people. um whilst I'd love to see us take more kind of genre swings and really try and like give an audience reasons to go back into cinemas to watch the work. Like I hate that, like if I'm like trying to choose a movie to watch with my girlfriend and I say like, oh, I was thinking of watching this movie. She's like, oh, cool, what's that? And I'll tell the kind of idea. She's like, oh, that sounds cool. And I say, yeah, so it's this Australian film. And she's like, oh, Australian. Like I think people just like immediately people I think it sucks that people think of as they hear Australian film and they think of it as like an admission of poor quality.
Yeah.
And I think we should be doing more to stop that idea. That'd be
Yeah.
nice.
That is exactly what everyone says, which is really interesting. Like I've asked like 12 people now. It's always the same thing. I don't know, it's kind of like what's happening? Like why is this not happening if everyone thinks the same way? But hope for the
Yeah,
best.
I don't know. I'm not even saying Australian films are like bad. I guess it's more that like maybe they're a little bland. Like maybe
Yeah.
they're a little safe. Like possibly it's I've nothing to back this up on, but I can imagine because it's kind of we have a lot of stuff that's dependent upon like state funding and government funding. It's probably we're probably looking for I could imagine that bigger swings maybe aren't given that much time and attention, as whilst kind of like more kind of safe shore Australian films could be.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I don't know. It is a thing that literally every single person in the Australian film industry talks about, and it never changes. So I don't know what the fuck is like the deal with that.
Well, it's
What's
like
the deal?
well, Screen Australia, like doing like the Wizards of Oz with you and like Rebooted is kind of like the right direction to go in. You know what I mean? And yet, like, I don't know. It's like, why are they doing more stuff like that? Like, because that's what people want to see, and you can tell like your videos did so well, and I just don't know how. I don't know. They don't see that at least, but anyway.
Yeah, I wonder like where. I mean, are projects like that being pitched and they're not being funded, or is it possible those projects aren't being pitched? Like, I wonder where in the process does that kind of happen? Is it that those sorts of voices are just not being successful, or if people aren't even trying to kind of work on that stuff, maybe because they haven't seen so much of it in the past that they don't think it's, you know, necessarily what Australian films are. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's a shame that most Australian filmmakers, I think, basically want to not be Australian filmmakers.
Yeah.
Um, but you know, I'd like to be an Australian filmmaker. I'd
You'll
like
be the
to, you know,
first.
make good Australian films, make cool stuff. That'd be
I
great.
agree. I don't want to leave Australia. Like, I want to live here. So, yeah.
I mean, what I think is I think this is all public knowledge. I don't think this is fine to talk about, but like, you know, Auntie Donna, maybe the best Australian thing,
Yeah.
in the last, you know, decade or whatever. But you know, they had a pilot for an ABC comedy show that didn't get picked up, and you know, it was released, but it wasn't picked up for series. Um, in lieu of like two other shows that were picked up for series that, you know, died after 6 episodes, nobody's seen or heard of. And they go to Netflix and they get a Netflix show, and that show rules. And now
Yeah.
ABC are like, hey, do you want to do a series with us? It's like, how the fuck did an Auntie Donna get this show picked
I
up
don't know.
here? Of all these people that had their first pitch of the post, and it turned out so good for them that that didn't happen. So then they could do the Netflix thing. But I think more than anything, to me, that's the indictment of the Australian film industry, is that fucking Auntie Donna couldn't get their pilot sent into series,
Yeah.
and it took the American thing to happen for now Australians to be like, oh yes, please.
Mm.
Like, what is going on when that's the
Yeah.
case?
Because I don't know if you know, but there's this YouTube channel called, it's like Brisbane based, called Hired Goons. And it's like short, yeah, it's like short comedy sketches, short films, but they're all like so funny, like just so good. And like, yeah, I've interviewed him and he was telling me how he knows everyone in Screen Australia and they all do, but they're just still, they don't give them anything. You know what I mean? There's no,
Mm,
because they do comedy, it's just like, I don't know, Screen Australia doesn't really like to touch much comedy by the looks of it. And that's just,
right.
yeah, interesting.
It sucks.
Yeah.
It's no good.
Mm.
I think it'll get better. I think
Yeah.
like, you know, the more time goes on, I think stuff will get better like that as kind of more, you know, younger people are brought into Screen Australia. I mean, the people that I know that work at Screen Australia are like very cool and like funny,
Yeah.
and I think probably feel the same way. I mean, you know, I don't really know what the deal is.
Yeah. Sweet. So just my last question. Just like what is next for you? If once again you're allowed to say, what is your next thing?
What is next? Well, you know, we were talking before about like kind of my YouTubey stuff, and how I you know, I have made like comedy sketches and haven't put them back on because I always kind of want to feel like the next thing's kind of bigger and better and more like ambitious than the last thing. And so with that trajectory, yeah, I'd really, you know, hopefully kind of the next thing will be a bigger thing. You know, I've been putting my efforts in the last few years writing features for various people, and you know, hopefully that's the sort of space that I can continue to work in for the future, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Sweet.
wish there was something I could say like something's coming out like in a month. Let's talk about
Yeah.
it. But no, it's yeah,
No, no, that's
it
perfect.
really is.
Because I've seen on your website, it's like you've got like hotel, time trap, caper, and those things. And I was like, oh, these, I am so excited. Like these concepts just are amazing.